At this time, it is my great joy to welcome to the podium Pastor Kara Stewart, who is the Executive Director of Neighbors Together. She joined Neighbors Together in January of 2020,
yes, ma'am.
Right before we shut down. Kara's ministry began in the low country of South Carolina with her first call, and she had some traveling to do out west for some other calls, but we're glad to have you back in South Carolina. Thank you, Pastor Kara.
Thank you, Bishop Jenny. I want y'all to know I just started my 20-minute timer, so we're going to keep to our schedule today. So the title of this presentation is I See Jesus in Our Spaces. And if I can get my clicker, I just got to practice, I guess. Turn it up. And the on button looks like this. On the side. There is. Oh, I got it, y'all. So I see Jesus in our spaces. The first memory I have of a church space is when I was, I think, 2 years old, because my 2-year-old Sunday school teacher, Miss Ann, was a member of the choir. And when I would come into church, I would look up into the balcony where the choir sat, and she would wave to me, and I would wave to her, and I knew that someone in church loved me. Our spaces matter because of the people in them. And so I want to talk a little bit about who we invite in our spaces today and how we can think maybe a little differently about our church buildings. Our ministry setting is very different. At Neighbors Together, we were begun as a social service ministry, and now we're thinking about how to add worship to that. But I see Jesus in the neighbors we serve every day and in the neighbors we worship with. We help people in a crisis. We started here. You see some pictures. I've got some great history to show you, but we started by serving food. Years ago, we were a place where you could come and get groceries. And now we have expanded to include health and wellness. We are working on the issue of homelessness in the Low Country and affordable housing. And we are committed to helping people in economic mobility find a way forward. We are not just giving free stuff away. But in September of 1983, we were founded because Lutherans in the Low Country cared about their neighbors. We heard that story that was just performed by that group, and we wanted to make a difference. And so you may see some pictures of some familiar folks. We've got a couple of bishop shots here to show you. We operated out of Advent Lutheran Church's parsonage. It was a very creative way that they used that space to help their neighbors. And our founding director, Skip Tapp, was a member of Redeemer Lutheran Church, but there were multiple congregations working together. We started giving out groceries and then expanded eventually to sharing a meal out back where we had picnic tables behind the parsonage. And of course, the big event of the year was our Christmas program, and we continue to grow from there. We continue to serve daily lunch. We started as a food pantry, and we continue to serve meals. We love to have volunteers come. We have the AKAs come on a regular basis, and we also have a fantastic group called Namaste Charleston. Our work is interfaith, and we really love that that's our perspective. We now have a commercial kitchen, so we have plenty of room for all of these volunteers to come and serve. And we serve around 150 meals every day, Monday through Thursday. And we've seen an increase, of course. You heard that from Pastor Chris last night, but we've seen an increase in folks who just need that basic help because the SNAP benefits have been reduced because apparently the emergency is over and no one needs extra help anymore. So I see Jesus in the faces of the youth groups who come. We had a Lutheran youth group that came and loved to host them on their service weekend. And we have community block parties all the time where we're serving meals and helping people with their basic needs. And we see Jesus in every meal we serve. the expansion of our food ministry could not have happened without an increase in our kitchen and dining space. So in February of 2017, we became tenants of the Methodist Church down the street. They had a very large education wing that was empty, and they decided to partner with us and rent space, and we moved in there, and we were able to then begin to expand our health ministry. So we have retired nurses who come and serve the people in our community. I see Jesus in the smiles of our neighbors with new dentures. This guy's showing off his new teeth. I see Jesus in the compassion and the respect that is shown to our neighbors from our retired nurses, our retired doctors who come and serve. And we continue to expand what we're able to do. Our next crucial ministry was working on temporary housing. So this is our next director. It was Sue Hanshaw, another member of Redeemer. They got a great tradition of supporting this ministry. And we had a Families in Transition program where we could help people who needed just a couple of months to stay. We had a little apartment in this donated building, and we were able to really engage with folks who were experiencing a crisis, some kind of medical emergency or some kind of job loss where they needed additional help. When Sue finally decided to retire for the third time, we had a great conversation. I was in Texas as a campus pastor at TLU, and I was looking to make a change and was talking with her about possibly doing a nonprofit. And she says, well, as a matter of fact, do I have a nonprofit for you? So I arrived in January of 2020, and then y'all know what happened on March 15th. We had to shut down. Our entire staff, we had 18 part-time staff members who are all retired. And they had been giving of their gifts and their compassion for many years, but simply couldn't stay on the books. Everybody went home, and for 2 weeks we schemed and planned, and we were able to open up, and we had an outdoor drive-through where we provided groceries to our neighbors, and we began to see that we were all in this together. It was a very challenging time, and we saw some beater cars coming through, needing some groceries, but we also saw some BMWs coming through, needing groceries. Because if you owned your car, but you lost your job, and you didn't have any savings, where were you getting groceries? So our volunteers started having these great conversations, and they started really wrestling with the question of, who are we and what are we about? And so we began to talk about changing our name. And if you know anything about changing a name of an organization, you know it was not a simple task. But in October of 21, because of our experience working together with neighbors that we knew and neighbors that we didn't, with people who were poor and people who were rich, people who all of a sudden didn't have anything, we realized we were living out that story of the Good Samaritan. We were neighbors together. And so we began to plot and plan, and our next step in our ministry happened because of another creative opportunity with a church building. The Methodist church that we were renting from during the pandemic lost a significant amount of members, and they had to close. But their closing gift to us was to sell us the building so that the ministry could continue. And so from that, we have began to expand our services in a way that really impacts the life of our neighbors. So we now have room to expand and share lots of classes for our economic mobility program. So we have 25,000 square feet now to fill with all kinds of services that will help people move forward. I see Jesus in the new classrooms dedicated to job training and GED classes. I see Jesus when our South Carolina Legal Services partners come to provide legal assistance. I see Jesus in our Small Business Academy, where we invite people to come and learn skills that have all kinds of great ideas for new businesses that can support them, their families, to build generational wealth. And I see Jesus in our NET program, where our neighbors come through and share their gifts, get work experience with us, and then we write them recommendations so that they can get better jobs. we are working on creative ways to serve our community, and it wouldn't be possible without our case management program. Now, I have spent years as a pastor in churches really focused on how we can help our neighbors, and we'll start a food pantry or we'll start a closed ministry. But that always ends up with the same people coming for the same services. The key that we are able to do at Neighbors Together is because of case management. We hire social workers who build relationships one-on-one with our neighbors who are in need. And ask the question, everything starts with the question, what is your goal? What do you want out of your life? Because we want to help you get there, wherever there is for you. And so our case managers start with that question and then begin to expand to understand everybody's family systems, their challenges with their education background. We build programs around specific goals for each of our neighbors. I'm very proud to say we are a location where Masters of Social Work students get their practical training. The USC program loves us, and so we get lots of distance learners to come down and spend some time with us in Charleston. It's not a bad gig. But the relationships that we build through our case management program, those relationships are where the transformation happens. It's where the power of the resurrection is shown in living color. I see Jesus in the dignity and hope our case managers provide. We continue to host special events. We have back to school events. We have a wellness outreach event for women. We have a champ event for men. We always have our Christmas program. No Santa Claus, though. I'm over Santa. Sorry, y'all. But what I love is that our Christmas program now is over several days, and one of the days is Sunday. And the Jewish synagogues who come and volunteer with us always volunteer to staff Sunday for us because they know we need to be in church on Sunday. It's a great relationship. It's a great opportunity to expand what we are doing. And so we are now, because of this space, we are also expanding our health and wellness program. We continue to grow and have more space for health fairs. We have added a nutrition class called Grocery RX, where students learn to use food as medicine. We have a commercial kitchen now that's big enough for cooking classes. So the students come and learn about nutrition, and then the next week they get a lesson in how to cook foods that are healthy for them to manage their high blood pressure or their diabetes, which we're in the South, this is what we do. But now they get to leave with that knowledge and free produce so that they can replicate that lesson for their kiddos at home. We are also committed to improving the housing opportunities for our neighbors, especially in North Charleston. Y'all know, if you've been paying attention, that we have a crisis in affordable housing in our state. But I'm here to tell you that North Charleston, our zip code 29405, has the highest rate of evictions in the country. We are at ground zero for no place to live. And so we have single moms who are making the choice to live in their car and not tell anybody because they don't want their kids to be taken away, because they can't find anything they can afford. And so we have a dream. Now that we own this huge property, we have a sanctuary that's been sitting empty. Our dream is to turn that sanctuary into a sanctuary for women and children. It would become temporary housing so that the single moms could have a chance to get their GEDs or get the extra training so that they can get a career with benefits, because that, my friends, is key for those of us who are single moms. We want to make that difference, and we want to do it with partners. This is a picture of an alliance we have begun in the Low Country of other nonprofits and other organizations that are interested in having that conversation and moving it forward. And we know we can't do it alone. We need to have everyone working together as neighbors together to solve our community's problems. Now, I've shared with you how we've used our spaces to serve the needs of our neighbors, but I also promised to talk with you about how we're adding worship to this experience. One deep need we're working on is how to support the spiritual needs of our neighbors who are making these huge transitions in their life. They're trying to break cycles of generational poverty. And you and I know that anytime we tackle a big challenge in our lives, we can't do it without the power of Jesus in community. And so Gospel Brunch was begun as an event where we could gather together around tables. We bring neighbors together around tables from North Charleston and Mount Pleasant and West Ashley, coming together for a meal, just like Jesus did. We have volunteers from partner churches who provide breakfast casseroles and fruit and juice. We have a really great grits maker. But it's a great opportunity for volunteers to come and do something easy, do something they love, and also begin to form relationships. We sing gospel hymns, and they're led by local musicians. The gentleman at the keyboard is the music teacher at North Charleston High School. We pray together. We share communion together. And instead of a sermon, although I'm not a bad preacher, but instead of me talking, I make sure to give them an introduction and some discussion questions, and then we talk around the tables about how that gospel story impacts our lives. This past month, our gospel reading was the walk to Emmaus, and we were talking about grief because, the disciples' reaction to Jesus pretending not to know what's happening. They were so angry with him. And we instantly went to the place of wondering, what does grief do when it's unspoken? And so we asked our participants that day to talk about grief and where they have had that experience of grief making you crazy or making you angry, making you say things you didn't mean. And we had a table, y'all, where we had a group of women. They all happened to be women at this particular table. One woman talked about the death of her spouse 6 months ago, and she was nowhere near recovered. Another woman talked about a new kidney that she had received and how when she had been on that waiting list, she was preparing herself to die. And yet another woman shared the story for the first time of her miscarriage that she had never spoken of, and how that grief had hung around her like a shawl for years and years. See, folks, lives change when we take the time to listen to one another, to get to know each other's stories. And I wanted to tell you the story of Janarvis and his aunt here. Janarvis is a special needs adult, and this was our gospel brunch that happened around St. Patrick's Day, if you can't tell. During COVID, Janarvis's day program closed down. And so his mom and his aunt, who had been his caregivers, had to reduce their hours and eventually quit their jobs so that they could take care of him, because he can't stay at home by himself. And in fact, because of COVID, his mom passed away. And his aunt came to us and said, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And our caseworker sat down with her, made a plan, got her the resources she needed, regular groceries until she could figure out the day program for him, help with the rent because they were behind on their payments. But more than anything, we gave them a community to belong to. Janarvis and his aunt come every time we have gospel brunch. And if anybody knows the geography of the Low Country, they live out on Johns Island. Oh my goodness. They drive forever and pass not a few churches to get to us. But what we are offering at Gospel Brunch is something a little bit different. We are offering an opportunity to get to know people you would never sit down with and have a meal. Here's my last picture, and this is why we do Gospel Brunch. These two folks, one very affluent lady, goes to a downtown church. Gentleman, African American, would have never sat down and had a meal together. There's no context in their life where it would have brought them together. But because of Gospel Brunch, where we invite people to just come and have a breakfast casserole, sing some good songs, and listen to each other's stories, these two are now friends. This is why we do it, because the church needs to be the place where people can come together. So I invite you to think about your spaces and how you might use those differently to see Jesus in the faces of your neighbors and to find ways to bring your neighbors together.